Hello and welcome to the Transfers podcast powered by FootballTransfers.com, where we bring you news, insight and analysis on that most important of the least important things, football. I'm Duncan Castles and I'm joined this week by one of the leading men of Portuguese football, Executive Director of Record, a famous face on Portuguese television, trusted employee of Cristiano Ronaldo, and fresh from his morning training run for the Lisbon Marathon. Welcome back to the Transfers podcast, Sergio Krithinas.
Hi, Duncan. I've quit doing marathons, just doing 10, 12 kilometer races, nothing more.
We know that's your sneak strategy to come in at the last minute for the Lisbon Marathon and finish in the top 10, but we'll keep it quiet.
Catch me if you can.
So we are midway through the January window, and it has been, I think, as we predicted on this podcast, a relatively quiet window. I think particularly quiet market in Portugal in terms of we've become used for large numbers of footballers moving from Portuguese football to England. So far this winter, though the League of Portugal has sent almost as much money to the Premier League as it's taken from it, with striker Pablo leaving Gil Vicente for West Ham for 20 million euros, and Sporting taking Luis Guilherme from the London club from West Ham United for around 3/4 of that sum. Sergio, why do you think we've seen such a fall-off in interest and pursuit of Portuguese players from the English League?
Well, first of all, probably there's not immediate obvious quality that as we did in some of the previous transfer windows. I remember Luis Diaz, he was a January signing. I remember Enzo Fernandez, also a January signing. Big transfers, top players. I don't think probably we don't have any player like that in Portugal. But there's also a feeling in Portugal, especially with the country just putting two teams in the Champions League. The champion has a direct qualification. The second placed in the league will play the third qualifying round. The clubs who are fighting for these positions, they're not willing to give away anything. So they are willing to commit themselves to have the strongest team they can, and so they're not very open on doing business on January. Right now, Porto leads the table with 10 points. It's a 34 week league, and we are in the middle of it. 17 games played so far. Porto lead. They have a 7-point lead over Sporting. Benfica are 3 points behind Sporting, and so there's a lot still to play and a lot of still to win, especially in the Champions League qualification. And so I think that the clubs will not be very open on selling their best players right now. You can see there's some potential good players over here. Probably the biggest of all is Rodrigo Mora from Porto, a really exciting young forward. But I don't see the clubs doing that before the summer, honestly.
So let's talk about that summer market briefly. And you mentioned Rodrigo Mora there, 18-year-old attacking midfielder. I think his best position, number 10.
Well, I think he's a good second striker. Like if you to play in a 4-4-2 with a stronger man next to him, with freedom to move around. Actually, this season he's struggling a bit in Porto because they are playing 4-3-3, and which is a system which does not help him a lot. It's a kind of footballer that Portuguese football has historically produced a lot. This kind of creative attacking players. I remember, João Félix was another example, and probably his career has been really under what people were expecting for him, even in Portugal. But we had a lot of players like that in the past, like João Pinto played for Benfica and Sporting, was this kind of player. And that's him. I think I see him playing really well in a 4-4-2 with a stronger and physical striker next to him.
So he's 18 years of age at present. Scored 12 goals and contributed 4 assists in 47 league and European appearances for Porto over the last 2 seasons, and I think being used predominantly off the bench this season by Francesco Farioli. Our SciSports analysis has his estimated transfer value at 47.2 million euros. I imagine Porto would be looking for significantly more than that sum if they do allow the player to move in the summer. And he has been marketed to basically all the top clubs in Europe and also even, I think, to Saudi Arabia over the past year. Is that correct?
Yeah, in the summer he was close to sign for Al Ittihad, and there was even Porto were upset the way Al Ittihad conducted the process, because they accused the Saudi club of messing with the player's mind because they had some kind of deal with the agent, and in the end the deal was not done. With this system of Farioli, Rodrigo Mora has not been playing really that much, or I mean, everybody expected this season to be his season, and he's been playing most of the time from the bench, starting some games, but he has not having a consistent season so far. He has a buyout of 70 million euros, which is not huge, but that's the fee that Porto will try to get for the transfer. Although I must say that probably this season he has not been increasing his value as people were probably expecting him to do, because his figures in the first season playing for Porto were really good, and the way he was playing was really good. I think probably people will look to him with some suspicion, because he's not a very physical player. He's a short. He's a thin player. Not very strong, but his decision is amazing. He's really fast, kind of fast-thinking player, and he's a great finisher as well. Really good first touch, and also really good last touch. So I think he in the right context, in the right system, with the right manager, I think he will be a really top player.
So we've seen European clubs in particular focus their efforts on this kind of age range of player, increasingly taking players sometimes as young as 16, and putting a lot of the transfer value into securing them as quickly as possible, a lot earlier than they used to do, and pretty much across the board of the top European clubs. We talked on the Transfers podcast last week with Jonathan Northcroft that this summer coming, we'll expect the Saudi Arabian league to spend heavily again, because a number of that kind of first wave of European-based players that they took in when the Saudi Pro League became one of the biggest spending leagues in the world will be coming to the end of their contracts in the summer, and they too are focusing on younger players. So it's interesting that Al Ittihad got so close to taking Mora in this summer past. Another young player in Portugal that seems to be a centre of attention for European clubs is Anisio Cabral at Benfica. Kind of fully established himself on that European scouting rotation at the Under-17 World Cup in Qatar last year, where he scored 7 goals, including the only goal in the final as Portugal won that tournament for the first time. I understand he's got quite an interesting situation with Benfica, in that his agents are aware and know that the contract is coming close to an end, and there's the possibility of moving him out without any transfer fee being involved, that he could move on a training compensation only deal. First of all, what do you think of Anisio as a player for the future in top European leagues? And secondly, how are Benfica handling that situation with one of their key young talents?
Well, Anisio is one of the many players that Benfica had in this Portuguese squad that won both the Euros under 17 and also the World Cup. I think there were 9 Benfica players in the squad. So Benfica has a really good generation of players who were from 2008 or 2009. That's about the age, the year they were born. This is a really good generation. Actually, Anisio, from what I know, of course, he's one of the most promising players, but Benfica has more hopes on the 2 fullbacks, the left and right. The left fullback is José Neto, a tall fullback who has made already his debut for the first team with José Mourinho, and Mourinho said, "I just gave him some minutes because I want to be the coach who has given the chance to play for Benfica the first time, because I think he will be a top player in the future." And also the right back with Banjaqui, also a player who is really strong, can do a bit of let's say potential Maicon, if you remember Maicon from Inter Milan. This kind of fullback, really strong, powerful, can go up front. So Benfica has really good hopes on both fullbacks, and there's also the other players who of course are top right now for the age group. In the case of Anisio, but Benfica has a problem over here because as FIFA rules state, players under 18 cannot have a contract for more than 3 years. And so Benfica are trying to give new contracts to all of them. Anisio actually will turn 18 in less than 1 month. On February 15th, he will turn 18. And of course, it's been quite a struggle to get these players to sign, to commit themselves for 5-year deals. Because agents are around them are seeing the chance of making a lot of money in a short term, because they left the World Cup highly evaluated, and they can easily find clubs anywhere, from Saudi Arabia to England, who can pay them high salaries, really high salaries. So Benfica are really trying and make an effort to give them all new contracts, including Anisio. I was asking around yesterday about him, and they told me clearly, we want to do a new contract for him. But they are aware it will be really tough, the negotiation, because the agents are moving around, and of course if they can do the deal now, they will not wait for another year or two to make a huge deal. And that's how football works these days. And that's a shame, even for clubs in Portugal. It's a shame because they're basically growing players and not keeping them, or not being able to keep them once they turn 18.
And I think also in certain cases it can be risky for the players themselves, in that they don't have that development period in their home country at a club that has raised them through the youth levels, and they get moved quite often under the influence of agents who see the opportunity to another European country for big money very early in their career.
You see what happened to Benfica when the team that won the youth league 4 years ago, I think. Some of the best players of that team, like Diego Moreira, who is now he's playing in France, and he's there are some clubs interested in him. But Chernobyl, other players who left the club because they were eager on doing big contracts. And now they are struggling to find themselves a good spot in a good European club. And actually, the players who stayed in Benfica, like Tomás Araújo and António Silva, they are playing both regularly for Benfica, and then they are doing their way, their path. Even João Neves, he stayed in Benfica for another season and a half. and he did a good transfer, and is doing really well at PSG after one full season playing for Benfica in the first team. So that makes a difference, of course.
And the more senior players in Portugal, in the summer window, there'll definitely be more action then, there'll be more money spent. Who would you say is likely to be the biggest target of the Portuguese current generation of players who are already dominant in the first team? We saw Manchester United through Ruben Amorim trying to sign Morten Hjulmand from Sporting in the summer and being blocked on that because Sporting didn't need to sell. We've seen some talk of Samu Iraola at Porto being a target for Tottenham and other clubs in the Premier League this January, but obviously Porto want to keep him to win the title. Are those the two most likely summer targets, do you think?
Samu, I think, and Morten Hjulmand are obvious summer targets. Samu probably a bit more expensive. He's in the Spanish national team. He's fully capped for Spain already, and he's still very young, and he has qualities that many managers love. Very big, physical, strong. He can play in the box, can play deep. It's not the most skillful player, but it's a very tough striker to stop. Morten Hjulmand, of course, is a leader of Sporting, team captain. There is this kind of a bit like there was with Victor Gyokeres, kind of an agreement with Sporting that probably they will make it probably easier for him to leave the club in summer. Because we've seen this story before. It didn't go really well, of course. But I think Hjulmand, the way he behaved in last summer, I think the club really appreciated that, and they will not ask for the buyout to release him. I would also add Victor Froholt, Danish midfielder from Porto. 19 only. They signed him last summer, and he's doing a really good season, making a huge impact for Porto. Of course, Porto have a team who is really high evaluated now because they are top of the table with 16 wins and 1 draw in 17 games. So they just dropped 2 points. So far, only 4 goals conceded in 17 games in the league. They're also doing well in Europa League, in a good position to go through directly to the last 16 round. And Victor Froholt has had a massive impact. Played 26 games for Porto this season, another one for in Denmark, and he's been a key player for the club. 3 goals, 4 assists, but he's a box-to-box midfielder, very intense, kind of player who can do, as we say in Portugal, lots of swimming pools in a game, going back and forth all the time. And I would be paying attention to him. And of course, there's also always Francisco Trincão from Sporting. He has been, when he was really young, at Barcelona. Didn't really work out, but is one of the best players in the Portuguese league right now, doing really well. Already scored 9 goals this season, 8 assists, 27 games for Sporting. And probably what makes him interesting is that he hasn't signed a new contract with Sporting, and right now his contract will be over in 2027. So he will enter the last year of his contract, and unless he signs a new contract with Sporting, which has been something that Sporting has been trying to do for the last year or so, he will be a really an easy target for many clubs in England, where the money is right now.
And still represented, I believe, by Jorge Mendes. So he has
still by Jorge Mendes,
access to all the top tables of European clubs.
He played a season for Wolves on loan, so he has been in England before. Probably, I think his level is higher than Wolves, I think, especially now. But I can imagine it could be hard for him to get in a top club, because he has been already in Barcelona, and in Barcelona he played 42 games in the only season he was there, so he was not a total failure for Barcelona. But I can imagine there is some doubts about him in a top level, but I still think he's a really good player. He's only 26, so he's still at the peak of his qualities. So clearly a player that you have to watch, especially being just 1 year left in his contract.
You mentioned Victor Gyokeres and his famous gentleman's agreement with Sporting there, which took up a good chunk of the drama in the summer before Arsenal finally secured him, with a lot of protests and fighting on Gyokeres' part in Lisbon for it. Yeah, I love the fee that Sporting announced on this. I've never seen one go to so many digits as a 65.764103 million euros plus another 10 million euros, 256,410 in variables. That was the officially announced number. I think it's fair to say it's been a difficult transition for Gyokeres. After those 2 seasons at Sporting in which he scored 97 goals in 102 games. It's been 5 goals in 19 Premier League matches, 2 in 4 Champions League, and 1 in 2 League Cup games, with that one assisted by Chelsea goalkeeper Robert Sanchez in the League Cup semi-final during the week. Sergio, how do you see that transition for Gyokeres? Why do you think he has gone from a team at the top of this Portuguese league where he was dominant? And I remember you coming on the podcast several times to tell us just the scale of the dominance he had in Portuguese football, to going to a team that's top of the English league and really struggling to score on a regular basis.
Well, there's many reasons that could explain that. I think, first of all, of course, playing in Portugal is not the same as playing in England. It's very different. Not only for the level of the game, although I think in Portugal it's quite hard to score goals, and you don't see many strikers scoring many goals in Portugal, because most of the teams defend in a really tight way. They prepare really well to stop the opponents. But the physical dimension of the game is totally different. Gyokeres would many times in Portugal have a lot of advantage because he was really strong. He was a beast in the sense that he would, when he was running on body to body with a defender, most of the times he would win the duel. And probably in England he struggles because he's playing with defenders which are really strong as well, fast, physical, and he doesn't have this advantage that you would have in most of the games in Portugal. Apart from that, you have to keep in mind that Gyokeres didn't do pre-season. He was on strike at Sporting.
Mm-hmm.
He actually was injured. He got injured in the national team in June, I think. So he was allowed by Sporting to come a bit later. Then he went on strike, and I think Gyokeres was only training in last days of July. I think he started the preseason really late. With all the drama that his transfer was had involved as well. So it would be always hard for him to be ready to play once he got to London. And of course, there's also the way Arsenal plays. Gyokeres in Sporting, he had a lot of freedom to move. Especially, he often left he's a kind of striker that needs space. He likes to be playing in deep, getting long passes most of the time, getting his runs from the center to the sidelines. You would do that many times. Get balls behind the fullbacks, especially the right fullback. He would move off to the left. And that's basically his game, because he was destroying defenders with his speed, with his strength, with his intensity. And in Arsenal, I have always the feeling that he doesn't move too much. He's probably too steady as central forward, and he doesn't have the space or the permission maybe to do his runs. Maybe all of that together is and of course the pressure of the fee, the fact that although Arsenal is top of the table, they are winning, is not scoring many goals, is messing a bit with his mind as well. Although I must say that from what I know, Gyokeres is a really, really strong-minded football player. It's the kind of player that he will never, he will hardly, I don't see him give up, This is the kind of player that he can be 10 games without scoring a goal, can be 10 games without making a shot, but on the 11th game he will be there running and trying and moving around as if nothing happened. It's a kind of player it's quite strong mentally, and I would not be surprised if I believe that his second season will be way better than the first season.
Well, you talked about permission there, and I think that's key in that he's now playing for Mikel Arteta, a coach who famously is obsessed with the position of his players and criticises them if they move out of prescribed positions relative to other players on the pitch. Certainly doesn't have his centre forwards moving into spaces on the wings on a frequent basis. That would be the antithesis of what he has the team set up to do. And also tries to control possession, so doesn't like his team hitting long balls and attacking quick at risk of conceding possession. So you're basically taking away two weapons in his armoury from Sporting, and as you mentioned, definitely up against faster and more physical defenders. So it'll be interesting to see if that mental resolution helps him find a way to be as effective as he can be in the Arsenal system. But it does seem from the way you're describing it that perhaps Arsenal make the best choice of centre forward to actually fit Arteta's system.
Yeah, honestly, when there was a lot of talks about which clubs could take Gyokeres, I thought, honestly, the perfect club for him, the perfect fit for him would be Atletico Madrid. The way Diego Simeone plays, I think Gyokeres would be perfect for him. He's a player, I'm seeing a stat here from last season. He's a player that he was one of the players with more progressive carries, long progressive carries. That's the way he plays. He likes to carry the ball, likes to receive the ball in long passes, likes to run, to face the defenders, and he's not very strong playing with his back to the goal. This kind of movement that some strikers do. He's not very strong inside the box. He's not very good playing with his head. So that's in a team that wants to be so dominant in games, so with so much possession and so much control of the game as Arsenal do. Probably it's not the best match, but Andrea Berta was really impressed with him, and Andrea Berta knew him from his time in Atletico Madrid. I think probably that's when they started when he started to be really keen on signing Gyokeres. But yeah, I can agree with you that probably other clubs would be more suited to the way he plays.
It's fascinating because we're in this era where analytics dominate in recruitment, and Gyokeres had exceptional statistics, exceptional analytic numbers. I talk to agents who will tell me that the job has changed in the sense that if you have a player with great analytics, you don't have to market him anymore. The clubs start calling you, and they call en masse, and then you decide which of those clubs would be best and work out a deal with the selling team. The difficult part is when your player doesn't have the analytics, but Gyokeres has them. But it isn't just about how you're performing in your current club. It's how you as a player fit into the system you're going to move into, because those great analytics can turn into mediocre ones if you're not the right fit in the context of the players around you and in the context of the way the coach wants you to play under the new system.
Yeah, it's obvious. If you have Lionel Messi, you cannot expect him to be playing inside the box and cross balls for his head, right? I mean, you have to understand which player do you have, and you have to understand how can you take the best out of the player, how can you fit them? Can you fit him in a team on a way that you want to play? And of course, if you sign Gyokeres, you can't expect him to be a Marco van Basten, or you can't expect him to be Zlatan Ibrahimovic. It's not this kind of player. It's not this kind of player. So I think that, but I still think that for his mentality, he will be a better player probably in the second season for Arsenal, because he's the fact that he didn't have any preseason, I think, is also affecting him a lot.
Yeah.
Because he basically was in Ibiza taking sun baths while everybody in football was training hard, you know.
And everyone in football journalism was talking about him.
Yeah.
Since we last spoke, Sergio, José Mourinho has made his long-awaited return to Portuguese football, having targeted a return to Portugal and grabbed it very quickly when the opportunity to move to Benfica following the dismissal of Bruno Lage came up, basically putting himself on Portuguese TV, I think at the airport in Lisbon, and saying how could he turn down the Benfica job. He was appointed in September. You've already said that they are third in the league, 10 points behind leaders Porto. Yet to lose in the Portuguese league, but 5 draws in 13 matches as coach there. Struggling in the Champions League, 25th of 36 clubs, 1 point off the playoff places, with 2 wins and 3 defeats in 5 matches, but they have Juventus away and Real Madrid as the last 2 games. And then in the last 2 games he's played, gone out of both domestic cups, losing the semi-final of the League Cup to Braga 3-1, and then making the players sleep at the training ground as punishment for that defeat.
Kind of, yeah.
And then going down 1-0 to Porto in the quarter-final of the Portuguese Cup on Wednesday night. How's it gone for José Mourinho? What's you cover Benfica, I think, closer than any club, being executive director of the main Portuguese sports newspaper. Tell us how it's gone for José Mourinho and why Benfica haven't got the set of results they were looking for when they hired him.
Well, I think you said it. No, how is it going? not brilliantly. He took the Benfica job when they were 5 points behind Porto, but with 1 game in hand, so it should be 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
And now they are 10 points behind Porto. So okay, something has gone wrong. Mourinho has been outspoken with critics to his squad. Many times. He was really, really corrosive when after several games. I remember the game against Atletico, a third league team for the cup. Benfica just beat them 2-0 after a very poor performance. Mourinho destroyed the players publicly. He did the same after the League Cup defeat against Braga. It's been quite common, or sometimes it's really hard. Some other times it's just complaining about the fact that he lacks quality on the bench, or lacks the kind of players that he likes. So that's Mourinho being Mourinho, always talking loud about things, in the sense that he's not hiding, but always getting something else to, I could say, probably divert the attentions from what's the reality, which is they are not playing good football. They did some good performances this season with Mourinho, but it's always the games where they are not the favorites, Benfica are struggling a lot in games where they should control and dominate the game. And they are being better in games against stronger teams. They had a good game against Napoli, a very good performance. They beat them 2-0. Against Porto, actually, on Wednesday, they were a bit unlucky. They should have gotten more from the game. They conceded a goal from a corner in the first half, and then Benfica was slightly better than Porto in that game, and they should have get at least the equalizer. Striker Pavlidis missed a clear goal opportunity on the 19th minute, so they were a bit unlucky. So the performance was good, but actually Benfica had, as you said, 5 draws in the league, and 3 of them were at home against smaller teams: Casa Pia, Rio Ave, and Santa Clara. So Santa Clara was not still with Mourinho, was still under Bruno Lage. So that explains a lot how the team is not being able to be a dominant team as you expect from a top team in a second division league, in the sense that in a league like Portuguese, which is really unbalanced, you see Porto winning every game and just having 1 draw against Benfica, actually. Sporting winning mostly every game, had a draw at Gil Vicente away, lost against Porto and drew against Benfica and against Braga too, but they're winning most of the games, the easy games, and Benfica are dropping points in the easy games, which is really hard to understand how this is happening. Apart from that, the club has only signed 1 player in the January transfer window, a youngster from Estrela da Amadora, and Mourinho is that he's almost craving for signings. He definitely wants a winger, wants a striker, a big striker, and so right now Benfica has 2 games to play in the Champions League, as you said, against Juventus and Real Madrid, and they have 17 league games, and the main target is to finish second and get the Champions League money next season. If Benfica don't finish second, I don't know if the club will keep Mourinho for the next season. And there's a clause in Mourinho's contract which allows Benfica or himself to leave the contract by paying half of the compensation that is due if they do it in the first 10 days after the last game of the season. So there is a possibility, there's a cheapest way to get Mourinho out of the club, or Mourinho to leave Benfica if he wants to.
And do you know what the cost of that compensation is?
If they do it in those 10 days, it's around 4 to 5 million euros.
Okay. And it's that clause is fascinating because, as I understand it, that was intended as a clause to allow Mourinho the opportunity to move on to potentially better things in the summer, with one of the jobs he targeted being the Portugal national team job after the World Cup. Do you still have the sense that Mourinho is the preferred option for the Portuguese Federation's president, as he was last summer, before they decided to retain Roberto Martinez when he won the UEFA Nations League?
I honestly don't see it that way, because the season will finish in May, and the 10 days will be expired before the start of June, which is still before the World Cup. The clause was included because when Mourinho was signed, Benfica was leaving elections to choose the president, and basically it was a way to say that Rui Costa was still the president of Benfica. He won the elections. That Rui Costa was signing a coach, but he gave the opportunity of other president, if other guy was elected, could sack Mourinho without paying a huge compensation. It was the cheapest way to, if another person wanted to get rid of Mourinho, okay, you can do it, and you don't have to pay the 10 or 12 million euros that would cost. So that was the intention of that clause, because actually the World Cup will be a problem for many coaches, in the sense that the ones who will be in the World Cup, unless they commit themselves before the World Cup with the club, they will probably start the next season without a job. I can imagine that even Roberto Martinez, who is in Portugal, his contract will be over after the World Cup. I don't see him have a job in July, and because you don't know when he will be able to start to work. And also the coaches will be waiting for the World Cup. They don't know what's going to happen in the World Cup to see if they will get the national team job. To Portugal, there's also, you have to consider the possibility of Jorge Jesus as a next manager of Portugal, because he's right now in Al Nassr with Cristiano Ronaldo and also João Félix. And of course, that could be a big influence to the signing of the next coach of Portugal. And I would not rule out as well Sergio Krithinas, who is right now in Al Ittihad in Saudi Arabia as well. So lots of candidates. Let's see who is going to be free or who is going to be willing to wait after the World Cup without a job to see what happens.
You mentioned the problems Benfica have had breaking down weaker opposition, which suggests a tactical issue with their preparation. Mourinho has changed quite a lot of his support staff when he went to Benfica. Not all the assistants are new, but a lot of them are new. What's the feedback been from the Benfica players on the quality of coaching and preparation?
I didn't get to speak to a lot of them, but you can see in the games, and there's been issues with Benfica that many times the first halves of Benfica are really poor. It happened recently in both games against Braga, both the league game and also the League Cup game. The first half of Benfica was really poor, which suggests that the preparation of the games is not brilliant. It seems that there's always something to correct by halftime. Like the way the team is doing the pressure, the way the team is compensating some movements of the opponent. That's the kind of work that sometimes it looks like Benfica has been caught by surprise with the opponents, which is really strange, and it shouldn't happen. Like when a club like Benfica plays Braga, which is traditionally a tough game, you have to know everything about Braga. You have to expect everything from them. And Benfica in both games against Braga was really poor in the first half, both of them.
So Benfica, by far the biggest club in Portugal, gone through quite a lot of coaches in recent years. Tell me, do the Portuguese press have discussions about the DNA of Benfica when it comes to assessing who the new coach should be, just as we see in England whenever Manchester United decide to sack a coach?
What's the DNA of a coach? It's always funny because people always say, Benfica must have, or a top club must have a winning coach. The DNA of a coach is being a winner. That's not the DNA, I think. I mean, everyone is a winner if they win, nothing more. No, it's of course in Benfica there's this demanding, historically demand that I remember, but it was when the club was winning more than they are winning now, that it was not enough to win. They should win in style, with playing attacking football, with flair. The fans should be happy. Probably the impact Jorge Jesus had in Benfica when he arrived in the first season was a lot because of that, because the team was playing really good attacking football. The same with Roger Schmidt, the first season in 2002, 22-23. So you can see that there is this demand, but right now I think the fans will be happy just if they get the coach who wins, even if 1-0 every game,
Let's talk about the coach at Porto. As you say, top of the league by a substantial margin, also doing well in Europa League with their 8th and in position to qualify automatically for the next round. They have a very interesting coach in Francesco Farioli, young Italian, still just 36 years of age, who initially worked with Roberto De Zerbi as an assistant, then went to Alanyaspor in Turkey, had a reasonably successful spell with them, then moved for single season spells at Nice and Ajax, where he almost won the Dutch title, 9 points ahead with 5 games remaining, only to lose it to PSV on the final day, and then decided to leave Ajax of his own accord. Ajax, I'm told, wanted to retain him, but he said he had to leave. He didn't think it was viable to continue another season after that end to the season, and chose to join Porto in the summer. Tell us about his qualities as a coach and the way he has the team playing.
You definitely highlight the defensive consistency of Porto. Only 4 goals conceded in the league. I think they have around 8 or 9 expected goals conceded, and they conceded only 4. It's a team really, really hard to beat. They have 2 defeats this season. One of them was at Nottingham Forest in the Europa League with 2 penalties. And the other one was in the League Cup game, a home defeat against Guimarães. A bit of a surprise. One of those games that, they were not focused. They rested some players, and then when they realized they were already 3-1 down, and they lost the game. So, but we can see it as an accident, because in the league they have been really, really consistent. Especially in defense, they have several wins by 1-0. They beat Santa Clara by 1-0 with I would say a poor performance, especially in the attack. They beat Estoril Praia 1-0, Famalicão 1-0. Several games 1-0 or short results, but since it's so hard to score against them, they are quite comfortable in most of the games. And of course they had really good signings, especially in defense. Bednarek and Kivior did really, really well. Kivior is one of the best players in the Portuguese league right now. And they signed Thiago Silva from Fluminense, 41. They signed him. Thiago Silva played for the B team of Porto, the reserve team of Porto, when he was really young. It was his first club in Europe. And his return to the club, has a huge star, is now 41, and Kivior played against Benfica as left back, but they have definitely more solutions to be for the remaining months of the season. Of course, everybody in Portugal saw what happened in Ajax last season, the way Ajax lost the league. I think they had 9 points clear, more than that probably, and they lost the league in the last games. And so, okay, people think, the Farioli's teams eventually they at a point they start to lose points, and they will have some struggle physically. But yeah, the lead is very comfortable right now. They have a key game, I think, against Sporting on February the 8th. And if they beat Sporting in that game, I mean, they will have the league in their pocket. But of course, it's the impact has been very good, and also Farioli has also assumed a bit of he has assumed the culture of the club of Porto. Porto is a club. Is from Porto, from Oporto, which is the second city of Portugal, the second biggest city of Portugal, and there's always this rivalry, a bit like in Spain between Madrid and Barcelona, in the sense that people from Porto don't like the way every branch of the government, all the power, everything is in Lisbon, the capital of Portugal. Mm-hmm. And so there's this kind of cultural war in the country between North and South. and the club FC Porto, they tried to bring that to football, in the sense that everything is against us. The power is in Lisbon. The referees are against us. There's this culture in the club, I would say, in the last 50 years. Pinto da Costa brought it up, and they were really successful with this culture. And André Villas-Boas is this season. The club has been doing that a lot, and Farioli has also been a part of that. The way in a press conference recently, he mentioned of a fact that happened in Portuguese football in the 1950s, something that of course he was told to say about this. Nobody knows what happened really, because it's been a long time, but there was last week of a league. Benfica and Porto were fighting for the league title, and they were tied, and the league would be decided by goal difference. And basically Porto say that Benfica got a referee that gave them 15 minutes of added time, in order for them to score more goals. But the truth is, Porto won that league, although this referee was later banned for life and everything. So nobody knows what happened for sure. But Farioli brought it up in a press conference. You see, like this is a kind of guy that's really involved in the way that the club has been acting. Porto has already signed a new contract with him last week. And so they are living in Wonderland right now.
Have they increased the release clause on that new contract? I understood he had a clause that had a value up to 20 million euros on his initial contract with Porto.
Yeah, it became a 20 million euro buyout clause out of the transfer windows, and 15 million euros in the transfer window, which I assume is only the summer transfer window.
You mentioned concerns about how long the team can keep going. That's something I've heard that is a concern inside Porto, that perhaps his preparation that he's using with the players is so intensive that there could be struggles with fitness and availability towards the end of the season, and it perhaps explains what happened at Ajax. Has there been any sign of that with this Porto team, that they're not balancing the physical output across the entirety of the season, and kind of sprinted off at the beginning and in pre-season with their training?
Well, not really. Actually, if you compare with the other rivals, Benfica and Sporting right now, they are really struggling with the injuries. I think Sporting has around 9 players out due to injuries. Benfica around that, and Benfica has actually 3 players with the dislocated shoulders at the same time, which is really strange as well. But Porto, they don't. Although they had some to rest some players at some point, and that's why they signed Thiago Silva to get another option to play in defense, because they had in the start of the season a big injury of Neto Perez. I think it was LCA, central defender. They got Thiago Silva to increase the options in the back, but they don't see them having a lot of muscle injuries or physical problems. And some of their players have been playing most of the games. Of course, Porto has been, since they are playing Europa League, they have been able to rest a bit in Europe, because the teams who play Champions League are not allowed to do it. And the Europa League group of Porto has been, it's not that hard, the Europa League. When you play Europa League, although the games are on Thursday, you can rest more than when you play Champions League. And Porto have that. In the Europa League, they're playing Nice, Utrecht, Nottingham Forest, Red Star. So it's games which are not Champions League games, and that has been allowing them to manage well the physical intensity of the season. So and when you get 7 points ahead, a 7 points lead, I don't think you. It's very easy to play when things are going so well for you. The team is confident, and they are starting probably to feel that they will not drop many points until the end of the season, especially in a league which is so unbalanced like the Portuguese league, which you don't have many teams who are able to get a draw or to beat the top three.
So we talked earlier in the podcast about how little transfer money has been going from England to Portugal in this January. There has been some substantial compensation money going from England to Portugal, though, with Ruben Amorim's exit from Manchester United, having run up some of the worst, statistically the worst performance for a Manchester United manager in decades. They're now following their exit from the FA Cup, in which he wasn't the manager. They're now out of both cups in the first round, no European football, fewest games that Manchester United have had to play in a season in 111 years. Sergio, you've looked into what happened between Ruben Amorim and Manchester United and how he exited the club. Given the context of how he worked at Sporting, is it a surprise to you that it finished with this conflict with Jason Wilcox asking him to consider playing a back four, and Amorim basically saying, if you want me to do that, I need new players and you need to get a new coach?
Yes, I was told that was like that. It was before the Leeds game.
Yeah.
Doesn't surprise me that happened because Ruben Amorim, I think it was a defining moment for him. He doesn't bend; he breaks. He wants to make a point, and he wants to have the power, the full power in the club. And the way to do it is, or you do it my way, or you do it with another person. In Sporting, he was also always very clear about that. He was at the point after in the summer, Sporting sold Mateus Nunes to Wolves. They did that against Amorim's will. Actually, they did that after somehow promised Amorim they would keep him for another season. And Amorim was many times in press conferences and publicly criticizing the board. But at Sporting, it was really powerful because he had won the league before. At some point, he was a hero for the fans. Because Sporting was struggling without winning the league for 19 years, and he won the league for them. And of course, he was really strong in the club, and he could basically say whatever he wanted, and he was with all the power inside the club. So it doesn't surprise me that Amorim does that. And when I saw him say what he said in the press conference and hinting that there were severe issues with Jason Wilcox, it was clear for me that one of them would be out of the club, Amorim or Wilcox, or in the end Wilcox would have to swallow a huge frog, as we say in Portugal. Like he would have to take his pride back and put himself in a lower position. And of course, when you have this kind of strong-minded managers, there's always this risk you take.
And Amorim had a different kind of relationship with his sporting director at Sporting, Hugo Viana, who's now Manchester City sporting director. In that he was a close ally of Amorim, so he was in a position where he could speak publicly against the club and complain about club decisions, and then have Viana come and smooth the ways with the directors and the president.
Yeah, Viana was his friend, one of his best friends, also of course allies in the club, and he would always take his side in this kind of disputes, which are normal in a football club because you have the board who knows the money that they can spend, or they want to spend the least that they can. They want to get more money for transfers, of course, and you have the coach who always wants the players and the best players. And at the point, Viana was Amorim's ally on that. It's not a surprise that they both left around the same time. Of course, Viana. We knew Viana was leaving the club a bit earlier than United approached Amorim, but it was clear that it would always be the last season for both of them in Sporting, because when one of them and in the end, Viana only stayed in the club for another 2 months after Amorim left. He left also after the January transfer window, so it's quite natural. And I don't know what Amorim will do in the future, but I think he will not change that in the sense that he will always want to have clear power and that people will know that he's in charge of the club.
So you could look at this three ways. You could say he was being stubborn. You could say he was being stupid and thinking that he could pick a fight with such poor results and come out the winner. Or you could even look at it and say he knew what the outcome would be, and the outcome would be that he was sacked, and he would be compensated for that sacking. Which of those three do you see as the most likely interpretation of what he did at United?
I think he was either or you would get out of that as a winner and say, you do it my way. That's why he said that I was hired to be a manager, not a coach. I mean, he wanted to make it clear that he was going to make the decisions. He wanted to make the decisions, or okay, he would get sacked and get the money. But he would never work. He would never work in a club where a board member or a general director or a sporting director will tell him how to play, which system to use and to play. That's clearly for Amorim that he would not allow that to happen in any way.
So where do you see him having that power next? Obviously, he was a former Benfica player. We've talked about the likelihood that the Benfica job will come up in the summer when Benfica have the option to take up that low compensation package to get rid of José Mourinho. Is he a strong candidate to become the next Benfica coach, or do you think he would see it as a kind of step down in his career to go back to Portugal after his first run at one of the big, more affluent European clubs?
That's the big question. I think Amorim will be a ghost in Portugal. Probably a ghost around Benfica and around Benfica's coach, whoever he is, because people know that he's a boy. He's a childhood Benfica fan. He has played for the club. Always assumed himself as a Benfica fan since he was a kid, and so people are expecting that to happen. A bit like that's very Portuguese. We're still hoping for our King Sebastian to come back from the war in Alcácer Quibir in the 1500s. And he's a bit like a King Sebastian for Benfica, that someday he will be back. So he will be a ghost, but I think it will depend on what he wants. I know for sure that if Benfica decide not to keep Mourinho in the end of the season, or if they decide to release Mourinho, they will try Ruben Amorim for sure. That will be the option, the first option, because the fans will love. It will also take pressure out of the board, because the board, despite the elections 3 months ago, they are under a lot of pressure from the fans as well. And so, yeah, it would make sense. I don't see him coming back to Sporting, especially, and there's also rumors about Sporting, especially because the relationship between him and the president of Sporting is not perfect. It was a bit tainted after the way he left. To Porto don't need a coach in the near future unless somebody comes and picks Farioli, but I don't see it. Although you have to keep in mind that there's a personal relationship between him and Antero Henrique, who is a former Porto board member and sporting director, and close to the current Porto board.
In terms of Ruben Amorim's long-term replacement, if we can use the word long-term about any Manchester United manager, we've gone through one interim in Darren Fletcher. We now have the second interim in Michael Carrick with Steve Holland, former England and Chelsea assistant manager, assisting him until the end of the season, and the target being Champions League qualification. One of the candidates for that job in the summer is Bournemouth coach Andoni Iraola, who is out of contract at Bournemouth in the summer, along with a couple of other Premier League candidates in Marco Silva and Oliver Glasner at Crystal Palace. Obviously, Bournemouth have a Portuguese connection in terms of their sporting director, Tiago Pinto. Do you know what his position is on Iraola, and whether Bournemouth are confident of keeping the Spanish coach out of the grasp of Manchester United or any other Premier League club who tries to hire him?
Well, from what I know, Tiago Pinto and Iraola have a really good relationship. The club is really happy with him. They are now struggling to get signings in order to have a quiet and less stressful second half of the season, because they, as you know, they lost a lot of players in the summer. Hjulmand, Gyokeres, the goalkeeper Kepa, the other defender as well, the Ukrainian, I can't remember his name. Yeah, so they lost all the defense. They were struggling a bit. They had this streak of 11 games without a win. I think they will try to keep Iraola for another season at least and give him a new contract, but they won't do it until the end of the transfer window. First of all, they have to somehow fix the squad, and after that, they will probably try to focus on the manager's contract. It will be tough, I think, because lots of clubs in the UK are looking at him. United, as we all know, it's been a graveyard for cemetery for managers. But let's see. At some point, somebody has to work. Will be a successful manager back at United. No, I mean, they will be a good team again at some point in the future. I don't know if it's going to be with the next coach or with or if that what else they have to change to do it.
And that new contract, do you see that they'll offer Iraola? Do you see them following the same kind of structure they did with Antoine Semenyo in the summer, when there was a lot of pursuit of him from clubs, including Manchester United, and that they gave him an improved contract with a defined release clause that Manchester City took advantage of in this window, and so far the highest fee of this transfer window?
Yeah, could be a solution. They could maybe give him a contract and had some release clause that will allow him to go at certain conditions. Tiago Pinto has worked in Benfica, has worked in Roma, which are clubs with much pressure than Bournemouth, in the sense that they have a massive fan base. And there's also a lot of media coverage on both of them. I think he has this experience already. He has worked with José Mourinho in Roma. Experience of is a kind of guy that he knows how to. He finds good solutions, all the time. He's a reasonable person who normally is a reasonable guy who has good solutions for things, and so I think you should trust him.
In terms of recruits coming in, I understand that they are looking at to secure a deal for the Ferencváros midfielder Alex Toth, 20-year-old, who, as with all of these young players that Premier League clubs are trying to take, has excellent analytics. He rates as the best central defensive midfielder in the Hungarian league at present. Fast, excellent stamina, really good at hitting passes, progressive passes in the field. What other positions do you see Bournemouth trying to recruit in this window to to make themselves secure from any kind of relegation problems?
Definitely, the defense was not solved properly in the summer. Even the goalkeeper Petkovic is not what the club expected, and Bournemouth spent a lot of money on him as well. I can imagine them getting a defender for sure, another defender, and maybe a goalkeeper. I think it could happen. Of course, the Semenyo deal could force them to look for a winger as well, an attacking player. But they made a lot of money on transfers in the summer, but the club has also built a new training ground, a new facilities, so they don't have so much money to make transfers. So let's see how they will do it. They will do it, but they cannot afford to spend money on players who are not successful as they did in the summer. They spent some money in players who did not work very well for the club.
So they have that problem of convincing selling clubs that they don't actually have a huge amount of money in the bank, despite having taken 200 million plus in transfers in the summer. It's always a difficult one for a sports director.
Yeah, people don't count the money they spend on facilities and infrastructures, of course.
And Antoine Semenyo obviously chose Manchester City. It started at a very rapid rate of scoring for Manchester City. Would have been even more if VAR hadn't got involved. Liverpool pursued that deal to the very end, I understand.
Yeah, Tottenham was trying it for a long time. They were pushing hard for the transfer, probably in the last year or so. But Liverpool was trying until the end. But it was Semenyo's choice, and he was loyal and kept his word. Because he wanted City from the beginning, and he didn't change it. Of course, in the summer, he was close to join Man United, but he wasn't happy on the terms of the contract he was offered, and so he was disappointed with them. But he had a good link with Ruben Amorim as well, and he would not. He would not immediately turn down Manchester United for what happened in the summer. But yeah, he wanted Manchester City, and that's what they did, and that's how what happened, because it was his choice in the end. All the clubs were willing to pay the fee that City paid, which was 75 million pounds, I think. So it was not an issue for the club. For Bournemouth, which club would sign him, and in the end, it was a player that chose the club that he wanted to go to.
Yeah, that approach from Manchester United we talked about in the podcast back in the summer. I had a meal with Ruben Amorim and mutually impressed with each other, but United offered him a substantially lower salary than that which they were prepared to give to Bryan Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha, and that upset Semenyo and gave up Bournemouth the opportunity to give him an improved contract, and that with that release clause that's been activated. Let's wrap up with our hero and villain section. Sergio, do you have a hero of the week for us?
Yes, I mentioned him before. Thiago Silva. He's 41. He was he left. Played many years in European top teams, Chelsea, PSG, and he's went to Brazil to play for his club, Fluminense, and now he's back to Europe, playing for Porto, where he started his adventure in Europe. His first game was against Benfica, which is the biggest game for Porto in Portugal. He was really good, really solid. Played 90 minutes at top level. Porto didn't concede. They beat Benfica 1-0. So he's definitely living a good moment of his life, going back to the club where everything started for him in Europe.
incredible career, Thiago Silva. I think unquestionably the best central defender in football for a period of that career.
And watch him in the World Cup. I think he will be in the World Cup, honestly.
That'll be fascinating to watch. 41-year-old Thiago Silva playing for Brazil, for one of the potential favourites for the tournament. So from one of the top central defenders in world football to Villain of the Week, who was once one of the top coaches in world football, but now in his position as FIFA technical director seems to be trying to do as much damage to the game as possible. Arsene Wenger, who this coming week will see his proposal for a radical change to the offside rule. Basically so that if any part of your body is on the same line as the defender, you're not offside, i.e. you can essentially be in front of the defender and not be given offside, discussed by IFAB, the body that decides on whether the rules change in football. I find it amazing that Wenger continues to propose this. It's such a radical change to the way football will be played. I don't think anyone has thought through the ramifications of this. The idea being that it will improve attacking play, and the idea being that it will help with the mess created by semi-automated offside and marginal VAR calls that take 6 minutes or more to resolve. I think what it's likely to end up doing if Wenger does get his way is result in more defensive football, because coaches will be too scared to push the lines up and leave space for opponents. And this is the same Arsene Wenger who's recently been promoting the idea of artificial intelligence coming into coaching, and saying that it will help the coaches. We will be capable during the game to ask AI, what should we do now? Now, if you think that's a good addition to our football, that we let computers decide how the game is coached, I think someone has been away from football for too long and working alongside Gianni Infantino for far too long.
Yeah, that's the offside rule is something I can't understand how come somebody thinks it's a good solution, or that it will increase the number of goals in the game. It doesn't make sense. I mean, of course, if you have to defend 2 meters more, because you have to be worried about the 2 meters in the back of the defense, what will happen is that defenses will be playing in their own boxes. It's the only way to avoid being trapped by strikers.
Yeah, and on top of that, the idea that it will solve the problem with VAR is just illogical, because you shift it from one side of the body to the other. You still get marginal calls, still exactly the same problem. You're just looking at a different place to try and make that marginal call, which I think the majority of football fans have now come to the conclusion that it is not to the benefit of the game to be having VAR interfering over these tiny marginal decisions and destroying the flow of the match.
Yeah, definitely. It should be, in my opinion, it should be, if you can see it with your eyes, okay, let's assume it's a mistake. If you can't see it with your eyes, what's the point of having a machine? In UK, I don't think you have that, but in Portugal, they release the margins of the offside, like sometimes you have a 1 centimeter offside, which is basically ridiculous.
No, they don't tell you exactly what the difference is in the Premier League. As you'll have seen, Sergio, they now show a computer-generated image, which, as supporters have pointed out, doesn't always match what is seen in the real-life footage.
Was it the Florian Wirtz goal right now, the recent goal against Newcastle, was it?
Fulham, yeah.
It was not. It was offside, apparently, and AI said it was not. Ridiculous.
Yeah. Sergio, thanks so much for joining us on the Transfers podcast. We will speak to you again before too long. Thank you.
Cheers.
You've been listening to the Transfers podcast, powered by FootballTransfers.com. If you liked what you heard, please spread the word. Follow, share and rate us. You can message us on Instagram, YouTube and Facebook at Transfers Podcast. Our Twitter, Blue Sky and TikTok address is at TransfersCast. I'm on Twitter, Instagram and Blue Sky at Duncan Castles. Our production is by Mark Caulfield at Pro Podcast Production, and our music by Mark Caulfield and David L. Stay safe, be well, and thank you for listening.
We did the transfer window.